Hello, and welcome back to the Telesummit. Your wait is over. This is for postmenopausal women who want to scale back their weight. And every time that we get together, there's another expert here to support you in your quest to lose weight. And today, we're with Dr. Ian Hollaman. He is a well-known chiropractor in Boulder. And I've actually known him for over 8 years. I was one of his first clients, and very happy to know Dr. Ian. So let's just begin with a question, which in this case is, I understand that you're a functional medicine expert. Can you tell us more about that, Dr. Ian?
Yeah, so I got into functional medicine actually in chiropractic college when I started having some of my own health conditions, a lot of fatigue, a lot of brain fog, very disconnected from my body. And basically, long story short, I went to 7 different doctors, different diagnoses, a lot of anguish and pain going through that process, but eventually went to a functional medicine doctor. And he, sat me down and gave me a very good overview, exactly what I had to do, and basically broke it down that I had different systems that were involved with my case, and I had to start addressing those systems at the same time. Diet, some lifestyle things, and through some interpretation of some advanced labs, figured out I had some pretty intense stuff going on. I had leaky gut and gluten sensitivity, some adrenal related issues going on, and so I had to clean all those up. So that was a big catalyst for me that made me want to go and learn more and help other people. So I went through, after my graduation and set up shop in Boulder, Colorado in 2008, I got my board certification in functional medicine from the Institute for Functional Medicine. I also got a master's in science and human nutrition and functional medicine. And now I am fascinated with functional neurology. And I usually am working with a lot of women, and because they're usually very interested in their health. So it's been my pleasure to actually guide a lot of people, and with, I would say, a little bit more of a focus towards thyroid clients and autoimmune. But in general, my average clientele is usually 55 to 65, postmenopausal woman, and just been blessed to work with that kind of a patient so far in my career.
Excellent, excellent. So how can, your clients' understanding of functional medicine, functional foods, be a benefit in losing weight over the age of 50, generally?
Right. So the benefit there is that when we start to understand the different mechanisms or the different causes of why we may be putting stubborn weight on. So, for example, in functional medicine, we're looking at all the different kinds of systems. So very commonly endocrine systems, so you think about hormones being involved, stress systems being involved, and how that can actually add weight onto a system. And then also very commonly overlooked, I think, in Western medicine is toxins, and how when we're routinely exposed to toxins in our environment, the solution to pollution is dilution. So when that happens, things get really gunked up. And so when you can actually step back a little bit and start to understand that you have different systems engaged and your body is coping by putting excess weight on, then it starts to make kind of a lot of sense, instead of just like, wow, I'm eating a great diet, I'm doing everything that Dr. Oz is telling me to do, or other health experts are doing, but I can't lose this stubborn weight. So that's where there's a systematic approach, I think, through functional medicine that always fascinated me. And it's because for me, and how I work with my clients is usually working on, their gut, and then working on their hormones, and then working on their immune system. And as we kind of build that process around their body, there's a natural tendency for the body to kind of go back to where it wants to be. And that many times is starting to get the ability to actually lose weight. So that's why I love the functional medicine piece, because it's actually uniquely individual to each person.
And so I've been hearing in the last 2 years that, counting calories and working out more is really not that effective for losing weight. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, there are some people that come in my office and they've done HCG diets, or they've done kind of fad diets. And inadvertently, what happens is they get into a vicious circle where they actually are losing muscle mass, and at the same time, they may be losing some fat. And then really what happens is they just became actually poorer at burning the fat in their body, because as soon as you go on to some of these crash low-calorie diets, you may lose some weight, but inadvertently you actually also start losing the ability to maintain a normal weight as well. So for me, I think that people need different diets depending on where they're at in their life. And it really kind of depends on what that person is and where they're at. I think there's a lot of just, unfortunately, just garbage out there as far as what people kind of are ascribing to. But I get it. I mean, people just don't really know what they should be doing. So whatever is popular or whatever is being shared on social media is what is kind of the trend is and what the fad is. The same thing happened in 1980s, 1990s with the Pritikin diet, and how a low-fat diet was like, it's what everyone needs to do. And then there's the Atkins diet, and it's like everyone needs to eat total fat and nothing more than just fat. And it's like, how is it like these like two big extremes, and yet for some people they can work a little bit, and for some people they can actually make people a lot worse. And that's where I think when you individualize what actually someone needs, then they may actually be able to get that breakthrough and then maintain it. Because we know if you lose weight, again, in an unhealthy way, especially when you're older, like in a postmenopausal state, and you're losing muscle mass at the same time, it becomes so much harder for women to deal with weight loss challenges, because muscle is just supremely important for actually maintaining a normal body weight. So.
Okay, and earlier you mentioned about toxins, and I think that's such a major factor, especially because we're living in a sea of 85,000 synthetic chemicals, and we're just being bombarded so many times from so many directions that we don't even necessarily recognize.
Yeah.
And the fire retardants in our furniture, and the plastics that we have our food stored in. I mean, it just
plastics, right? Yep, right. Or plastics.
Yeah, exactly. But what would we do without them? I hate to say that, but and then if there's maybe a quick way to have us recognize how really important it is, because also the toxins reside in the fat, right?
Yeah, they do. They absolutely do. And that's where, again, it becomes a vicious circle for people, because you don't want to necessarily detox in an unhealthy way, because you can dump those toxins too fast from that fat tissue. So I think that's where, again, sometimes people get in trouble with diets, is they may not feel good when they're going through a detox. And so that for me is one measure of if a detox is right for you. If you're feeling worse, for me, that's an indication that maybe we actually we're pushing your body a little bit too fast, and we need to reconfigure things a little bit. I think there's just gentler ways to do that, and that maybe incorporates slow movements, exercise, yoga, having that piece in there, which is really important. Making sure that you're opening up detoxification pathways, and all those combined with the right diet, I think can actually start to make a big difference. Usually in my practice, what's average is women lose about 10 to 15 pounds in the first 30 to 45 days. And that's not with actually doing any exercise, because also most people come into my practice and they're fatigued. They're super tired, right? So The last thing that I would want to do is say, hey, look, here's this hardcore detox program we're going to do on you, and they feel worse, and I just get them to keep going through it and going through it and going through it. And rather, again, if we can just figure out some of the different weak links in their puzzle and then give them that need, right, then their body can actually start taking that information and starting to heal at a deeper level. And it becomes gentler. It's not like we're pushing people, right? That's where I think these fad diets and other things that are out there are really, they get people in trouble many times.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Exactly. And we've mostly all experienced those fad diets. And speaking of which, I don't really think it's a fad, but I want to check it out with you. You would probably know about fat. The more fat that we imbibe in, the healthy fats, the more we burn fat. Is that correct in your estimation?
So one of the things I tell the women in my practice all the time is that fat will make you skinny. Now, that's a generalization. I'm kind of usually just trying to make people, laugh a little bit, because again, we've been somewhat brainwashed by modern medicine and again, the American Medical Association and what they're prescribing to, that we need to be on these low-fat diets. In reality, when you have a diversity and abundance of that fat in your diet, it can really rev up your metabolic machinery to lose weight. So routinely, we're selling coconut oil, we're selling olive oil in our practice. And I when I was doing my master's program, I got really interested in fats, and I started doing research, and I discovered that I think it was like there was a research study done that like 20% of olive oils that are imported into the United States aren't even olive oil. And so, I mean, even fat sometimes isn't even fat. But when you get educated about that stuff and you really start incorporating all these healthy things on a regular basis, cold water fish, grass-fed beef. I mean, there's as many fatty acids in grass-fed beef as there is in cold water fish like salmon. So sometimes people don't want to eat salmon. I'm like, okay, well, can you do grass-fed beef? And they're like, oh, I love that. And it's like, well, great. There's a source of omega-3 fatty acids. And then, of course, supplementation, whatnot comes up. And I think that's important too, especially when you're trying to engage people's, again, the machinery that's necessary for weight loss, or really just getting into the mitochondria. So mitochondria is your powerhouse, and that when you can actually start feeding that organelle, that cellular organelle, that starts to actually make more energy in your body. And then your body can actually start to handle switching into that fat, that fat burning mode.
Yes. And in my personal experience, I found that when I do incorporate more fats into my diet, I mean, I have at least 2 to 3 tablespoons of oil at every meal. And when I slather my salad in a wonderful fruity tasting olive oil and a fair amount of Himalayan salt, that's all I need. And it just becomes very yummy with that fat, because that's what delivers the flavors primarily.
Yeah, and it satiates you, right? So, when you can actually have a really good meal, and then you're not looking for the cookies and the brownies and the ice cream, and because you actually gave your body nutrient density, it's like, well, that's brilliant. Then you're not adding in all those empty calories, which are not really empty. Those are inflammatory calories, right? That's stuff that's actually adding a burden onto your body. So I think that's wonderful, and it's kind of actually making me a little bit hungry right now.
Yeah, me too. Okay, well, another thing, because one of the biggest things that we women struggle with, maybe some men too probably, but is the fat around the waistline, the adipose fat. And so that's probably has to do, from what I understand, with the insulin resistance. Can you talk about that in terms that we can understand?
Sure. So insulin, critical hormone, and it's huge for many different reasons. But of course, one of the basic things that insulin does is it grabs onto blood sugar, right? And so our protein, our carbohydrates, and our fats all break down into sugar. And so we have to take that sugar, and sugar is kind of like the key, and insulin's like the lock. And so to get that blood sugar into the cell so that we can use it, okay, for all our metabolic machinery, you have to kind of get that right fit with blood sugar and insulin. But of course, what happens is when we overwhelm our bodies with blood sugar and we're not processing and handling it, and we're building that blood sugar level up, we have to bring insulin levels up at the same time. Then over a period of time, we start having so much insulin in our body that we lose sensitivity to it. So then what happens is, because we're not making that energy, right, that actually ability to get that blood sugar into the cells slows down, that we start switching our machinery. So we kind of go, wow, this one isn't working, so what we're going to try to do is do a different kind of machinery. Now, that actually costs more energy when we start switching our systems over. So what happens inadvertently is we kind of get like a backup in the system. And that backup in the system actually will start to cause weight gain. So when that weight, especially around the waist, is present, yes, it's a very good indication that there is insulin resistance. And then again, another really fascinating thing, and one of the things that I learned in my my master's program, was how the environment, the toxins that are actually out there, can also make us more insulin resistant. So that communication between the blood sugar and the insulin is dependent on a healthy environment. So if you're breathing in, carbon monoxide all the time, if you are exposed to heavy metals, if you're drinking, things in your water that shouldn't be there, all those different things add up in your body. And one of those cellular things that starts the dysfunction is that communication between blood sugar and insulin. And of course, that can just make us fat.
Right. So is it a matter of eating too much sugar, or what is it that we can mitigate here?
I think that's a great step. I think that's a fantastic step because, of course, like I said, if your sugar levels start to build up too high, then yes, absolutely, you're going to start to cause that insulin level to go up. And again, insulin it's a growth hormone, right? So insulin triggers us to make fat cells. And then what happens is insulin also makes us want to create more estrogen. So estrogen then actually is, again, another hormone that makes us want to grow. It's what estrogen does. It helps, the baby grow inside the mom. But if you've got this vicious web where these two are talking together, it creates a big problem. And so obviously, I think one of the most critical steps is that people need to get refined sugar out of their diets. And that's, again, going to be anything that's baked. That's going to be your pastas. That's going to be, your cookies. It's going to be your desserts. But then there's sneaky things that kind of fall into that category too. And that's going to be added sugars to teas. I used to be a proponent of honey until, again, I did my master's in nutrition and realized that honey was fructose. So for some people, if they start consuming too much fructose, which again also would be like fruit juices, right? Without the fiber in like fruit, then you spike your blood sugar. You're going to have more insulin. You're going to have more fat. So I think people should eat fruit. I think you should eat things that are more starchy, things that have fiber in it. And then that's going to actually keep your blood sugar levels nice and even. And then that's going to send your body the right signals over a period of time that it's actually okay to lose weight now.
Mm-hmm. And are there any particular, groups of fruit that you would suggest over others?
So again, when I start people out, especially because balancing blood sugar is so critical, right? So whether you have high blood sugar or low blood sugar, in general, I'm usually recommending peaches, pears, berries, the things that are, we'd call them lower glycemic index. All those kind of things are going to have really rich fiber content in it. And then they're also going to have all these antioxidants in there at the same time. So that's, again, it goes back to the nutrient density. When we can actually get the body loaded up with nutrient density, that's a signal to decrease inflammation in your body. And that inflammation actually many times is why women lose the weight in the first, 30 to 45 days that I might work with them, because they're so inflamed. They're actually holding on to water, and they're actually holding on to excess fat at the same time. So that's where I think it's really exciting when you can actually see those first gains, or not really gains, the first loss, right? And then that's where you can kind of start building your momentum. But for me, it's usually restricting more of your tropical fruits. And again, especially making sure that you are restricting any fruit juices. I think that that's going to be really challenging for most people's physiology.
And especially the bottled fruit juices. Whenever you see the word concentrate, right, from concentrate.
Oh yeah.
Sugar in there. Big
Oh
time.
yeah. Oh yeah. And it all adds up. We don't think about it, but it's like, oh, we had some sugar in our tea and with our coffee or our breakfast. And then, maybe mid-morning we have another cup of coffee and we put some more sugar in that. And then lunch we have our sandwich, and that's got, sugar basically in that bread. And then, and then we've got our smoothie with juice in it in the afternoon. And then after, your dinner, you've got dessert. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, like you just had a bunch of excess calories of sugar that really more than likely subtracted from your wellness rather than added to it.
Yeah, exactly. And, sugar is such a big deal because it's so bad for us, and it is so prevalent, and it is so addicting.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably one of the main things we need to get out of our diet, whether we're trying to lose weight or not.
Yeah.
And do you have any, quick tips on things we can do or imbibe in that will help to cut that sugar addiction?
Yeah. So there's different methods of doing that. A couple favorites that I like. One is inositol. And inositol is kind of similar to a B vitamin. That's inositol. And it's interesting because it almost tastes sweet. And a lot of times it just kind of, I give people, they're like crushed tablets to kind of chew on if they have sugar cravings. And it's a wonderful way to kind of satiate people, yet it actually helps to stabilize blood sugar. Another one that I use a lot in my practice is alpha lipoic acid, or it's also called ALA. And alpha lipoic acid kind of fits nicely into some of that metabolic machinery that we need so we can process more energy. And I also use it with a lot of my autoimmune clients. So a lot of my thyroid clients, I'm using that nutrient in a extended release formula because it can give you some phenomenal results. And then also I think, one of the principles that really I took to heart when I was doing all my training was, when you're born, you have two senses. You have salt and you have sweet. If you do not satiate those, you will satiate those. So we all naturally have cravings. And so you can satiate that with, again, a piece of fruit, or if some people tolerate it, potentially adding a small amount of stevia into something. That's something that can be, sometimes people don't do well with stevia, but a lot of my clients, I say, hey, look, you can use this as a substitute. But you need to do something to satiate salt and sweet, or you're going to end up in the pantry at 11 o'clock at night, grabbing at crackers and, stuffing those things in your mouth and then feeling guilty 20 minutes later. So do that with good hope. Feel good about yourself that you actually made the right choice, especially when you've made a commitment to something like, hey, look, I want a better me. I want to lose weight. I want to feel better. And it's really self-defeating, obviously, if we set ourselves up for failure by not, abiding by those natural tendencies that we all have.
Mm-hmm, exactly. So one thing I've seen in my practice is that a lot of people have some kind of thyroid imbalance, and they're not even aware of it.
Yeah.
And that has a lot to do with whether you can lose weight or not, right?
Critical. It's huge. So right now, there's some research that was just recently published showing that 40 million American women have thyroid disease. Half of those women don't even know it. So, I mean, we're talking about roughly, right, 1 in 6 women have a thyroid disease.
Wow.
and then one in three of those don't even know that they have it. And so, yeah, the number one client that I'm working with in my office is a thyroid based client, and it's interesting how that kind of worked out. But it just, people started coming to me, and I started to have to kind of learn how to actually help these people. But what's happening in Western medicine is someone might walk in with thyroid symptoms. They're fatigued. It's hard for them to lose weight. They're constipated. They're brain fogged. They may have joint pains. They've got a constellation of these symptoms that are, thyroid related. And their doctor goes, oh, great. Your TSH is high, your thyroid stimulating hormone, right? They test that in your blood. And they say, look, hey, if you're one of the lucky ones, they'll say, oh my gosh, your TSH is high. Here's a thyroid hormone replacement. So women take that, and then, or men, this happens to men too. And then they go, what? But I still have symptoms. I still can't lose the weight. I still can't lose the baby weight. I still feel brain fog. I still feel fatigued. So I just need more medication, right? And the doctor's like, well, no, you can't take more medication here. There's something, you're just not dieting enough. You're just not exercising enough. And it's like, well, that's actually not correct. People will beat themselves up so much trying to diet and exercise. And in reality, it's their immune system. And 95% of people with a thyroid-related issue are actually autoimmune. They're suffering from something called Hashimoto's hypothyroidism. So that is America's number one autoimmune condition. And basically, it's when your thyroid gland, right, is being targeted by your immune system. And that really, again, goes back to the fact that any autoimmune condition has a genetic component, it has an environmental component, and then there's triggers. And that could be things like insulin, estrogen, cortisol, infections, all the things that we're kind of talking about can actually then manifest as a thyroid problem. The other thing to mention too is that women walk into the doctor's office with all these thyroid symptoms, weight loss challenges being one of them. Their doctor measures their labs and they go, oh, no, your thyroid's fine. And they're like, well, how is that possible? I have all these symptoms and I've taken all the quizzes and it says that I have a thyroid problem, yet my labs are normal. And again, the disconnect is their doctor is only measuring typically one marker, maybe two, maybe TSH and maybe T4. So in reality, you need to have your thyroid antibodies checked. Something called antithyroglobulin and thyroid peroxidase. So those two antibodies are what actually gives us the diagnosis of someone with Hashimoto's. And if that's the case, that should be a relief. It shouldn't be a diagnosis of doom, right? You shouldn't be, you should be alarmed, but there are millions of other people out there that have had this diagnosis and have overcome it. And what they've been able to do is identify these triggers, deal with them, and then rehabilitate their immune system. And I think many times what I see is over a period of time, their body starts to normalize and that weight piece actually starts to improve.
Good, that's helpful. So I know that you are, you've mentioned before, whenever we've been together, sometimes that people are disconnected from their food. Could you talk to us about that for a little bit?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, I think a lot of times is a couple different things I guess I have to say on that. A lot of times when we become fatigued, and many times that's either because the choices we make or we're so stressed out or there's things happening in our life, we start to look for the easy way out. And what happens is, of course, many times that is food. And that then leads to poor choices. And poor choices beget poor choices. So vicious circles start to develop when we don't feel good in the first place, or we're not educated enough to make the right choices for our body. And then, of course, the easy thing to do is, well, we don't want to take the time to make a salad. It's like, well, I would much rather go out to eat and get the food there because it makes me feel good. So in reality, we start kind of becoming slaves to hormones and neurotransmitters in our body, which if we could actually just take a step back and go, hey, look, if we can actually get a plan of attack with our food and our diet, and we can become educated about how things like lean protein, good fats, good dense, vegetables and fruits, how those actually serve our body, that actually can create the momentum in the opposite way. It's just, again, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's these fad diets out there, and there are, I think, a lot of Western medicine is basically saying, oh yeah, well, when diet and exercise doesn't work, then take this medication. And it's like, well, hey, look, when diet and exercise doesn't work, maybe we need to find a different diet and exercise for you.
Mm-hmm.
Or, maybe we need to find actually some natural supplementation for you. Or maybe we need to actually try more of a comprehensive program from someone who has a little bit more education than just, hey, when your diet and exercise doesn't work, take these drugs. And now you can listen to the next 2 minutes of all the side effects of those drugs. We don't, you see those commercials all the time, and it's crazy.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, we need to wrap this up in a minute, but I want to know, because this is very much of a global telesummit. I have other guests from Australia and Europe coming up, or have been on. And I just want to know, and let our viewers know, if you can do some work with anyone long distance, because as we said, you're in Colorado.
Yep.
Can?
Yep, yeah, absolutely. We'll do distance consultations with people. Of course, I love to do physical exams with people in the office, but if that's not possible and someone really feels connected to what we're doing at Red Tail Wellness, we do telephone consultations and, of course, reported findings. We can basically order labs wherever we need to and have those drop shipped. And, of course, supplementation can be drop shipped to where people need it. We have a full-time nutritionist in our office as well. So we can definitely, I think, help the majority of people that walk in our office as it relates to some of these concerns that come up very commonly with postmenopausal women. And they deserve it, right? I mean, we need more help for the women who work so hard for us, right? And raise our children and work so hard in the work industry, and they are so often left out. And in reality, they are, they're our crown jewels of our society, and we have to take care of our women, because they are raising the next generation, right? So,
Yes.
Good people, we need to take care of them.
I think you have 4 children of your own, is that right?
4 babies under 7.
Oh.
Yeah, so we're done. But yeah, they're a blessing, and my wife is amazing, and so we got to take care of our women for sure.
Excellent. I like that attitude. And thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you around the planet.
Okay. Take care, Jean.
Dr. Hollaman.